out of our control. Could have been worse. Had that have happened after the meeting started, I imagine a bureaucratic nonsense would have had to have, yeah, okay. So here we are, we can crack on. Thank you for attending. First item on the agenda today is apologies from members. I have apologies from Councillor Mulhall, who has to attend another meeting.
No other apologies, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 2 then, late items to be introduced by the Chair. Today I have none. So we can move straight on to item number 3, which is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? That's none. Thank you. Rattling through, we are on now item number 4 of the agenda, which is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of October 2023. You've all had a copy. Anyone would like to move that as an accurate record?
Sorry, can I just ask one question?
You can.
Yeah, it was just on the final page when we talked about the risk tolerances and risk appetite, and just at it was resolved to recommend the council review the risk appetite. That doesn't form part of the outstanding resolutions, so I wasn't sure whether that's going to be brought back here or whether we're leaving it with the executive to do it on their own.
Thank you. So the nature of that action then could have been taken 2 ways, as a resolution or as an ongoing action to take away. Would you like to respond?
I'd imagine that we'll take it away as an action to respond on.
It'll be dealt with as business as usual, but if some time passes and you want to raise the query to see if there's any progress being made, bring it back to the committee. Thanks for the question. Any more questions? Are we all happy then that that's an accurate record of the meeting? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, item number 5 then, Audit and Governance Committee outstanding resolutions. Everyone has a copy. Are there any questions, queries, comments? Yeah, please.
I think we're a bit short on dates and things really on report event for a future meeting, the second one. Currently make arrangements for heritage impact. We don't have a date for that one. Report go to a future meeting. We don't have a date for that one. We're just a bit short on dates. Do we have any indication of dates? Timescale?
Not yet. It's for this municipal year, so it will be sort of before the AGM.
It's within the financial municipal year, is it?
Yeah, yeah, but I can't give you a date yet, but it'll be sort of before May.
Okay.
Thank you. Any more observations or queries? Thank you. Moving on then. Item number 6 on this agenda is to the appointment to the independent remuneration panel. Alex, did you want to speak on that?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Committee, for inviting me to speak today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Alex Huff. I'm the Head of Democratic Services. Hopefully the report is fairly self-explanatory. The Council is required to maintain something called an independent remuneration panel, which makes recommendations to the full Council on the level of allowances, both basic and special responsibility allowances received by councillors. Statute requires that that panel is comprised of a minimum of 3 members. We have traditionally maintained a panel of 6 on our independent remuneration panel. Sadly, we had one member of the panel pass away around 18 months ago now, and we have one long-standing vacancy. We've been seeking to fill those vacancies at the same time that we went out to recruit for the independent positions on this committee and also the Standards Committee. Once those applications were filtered and successful appointments made to both this committee and the Standards Committee, there was actually only one remaining candidate who was only interested in being appointed to the IRP. We have, myself and colleagues of Democratic Services and the Monitoring Officer have met with the proposed candidate, which is Mr. Ron Priest, to discuss his suitability for the role. We are very happy to recommend Mr. Priest to the Audit and Governance Committee to be appointed to the IRP. He currently sits on the Council's independent school appeals panels alongside a couple of other members of the IRP. We're also seeking to reappoint several existing members of the independent remuneration panel, so their terms of office run for the remainder of this electoral cycle. We're also seeking to appoint David Pearson. Now, David has been involved with the IRP before as a substitute for the Chief Executive of the East Midlands Chamber of Commerce. He's now been recommended as a permanent appointment to the IRP, as the Chief Executive is no longer able to commit the time that's needed. We're hoping to get these appointments resolved relatively soon, as I expect there'll be a requirement for the Independent Remuneration Panel to report in the new year to coincide with some of the changes that will be brought about by the Constitutional Review. So there could be some changes to the level of special responsibility, number and level of special responsibility allowances if certain changes happen via the Constitutional Review. So we want to bring the panel up to close to full capacity so that they can undertake that work in the new year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Huff. So, for clarity then, the report suggests the appointment of David Pearson and Ron Priest to the IRP and the reappointment of Narinda Sharma, Trudy Hanson and Alan Larkins. Does anybody have any queries for Mr. Huff? Yes, Councillor Kemp.
Yeah, I was thinking this is a similar situation as we have with our own committee and the independent members on here. When we introduced our new independent members, we decided to stagger the appointments so that we would always maintain a level of, well, much more likely to maintain a level of experience. And I just wonder whether this is something that should also be done for the remuneration panel, unless we're precluded from that by something in the guidance nationally.
I'm not against that, but is that a requirement?
Chair, if I may, no, there's nothing that would preclude that. I think it's less of an imperative with the IRP compared to this committee, for example, given the nature of the work. So with the Independent Remuneration Panel, we would maybe go to them once a year to review the scheme, and once every 4 years we'd do a really thorough review of the allowances scheme. But if that's something that the committee would like to see, there's nothing that would preclude us staggering the appointments.
Thank you. So, Councillor Bolton.
Yeah, I think it makes sense actually, and then we have got some stability when we renew the committee, and obviously people who have got the experience of sitting on the committee, and they bring their knowledge and experience to it. So I think what's suggesting is a sensible option and would probably serve us well as a council. Thank you.
Mr. Sunderland.
Do we have a view on the number of years that somebody should sit as an independent chair in local government? It will take Narinda to 10. And I know in the private sector, or, you know, big companies, it's sort of, that would be at the long stop end of what's considered independent. So I just wondered whether we should consider that. It's not necessarily for now, but going forward, it seems 10 years would seem long enough, I would think, potentially.
Yeah, I think that would be a sensible suggestion. I would say the counterpoint to that would perhaps be that we do struggle to appoint to some of these positions sometimes. We've not had an overwhelming response to the advert that we placed. I would, in the report, have mentioned that we will try and proactively seek some more candidates to the panel who might be suitable. And I'd also propose that when we restart this next cycle, the next time the IRP meet, we would hold a new election for the chair position between the members of the panel. And we'll probably put it to the membership as to whether they wanted Narinda to continue in the chair.
Thank you. Okay, so before we move on, there's a suggestion of reporting to full council, which has been supported. Are we all in favour of that before we consider this? Councillor Kerr.
In that case, and also considering to maintain the membership for a while, I would suggest that we go for what is 3 and a bit years up to 27 and take 3 people to 2 years beyond that, so that we stagger it as a 3 plus 3, but we let the first one run for until 27 and the other 3 run to 29.
The proposal then to guard against all-out of members appointed to committees at the same time as an all-out council situation. Okay. Yeah, again, I have no concerns. Does anybody have any concerns, or are we largely happy with the proposal? Should we take that forward then? Thank you. In relation then to the recommendations to appoint and reappoint the members, are we all happy? All satisfied? Yeah, again, we can pass that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Huff, for the work that you've done there and for your report. Item number 7 then is an update from external audit. We do have representative of external audit. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. It's just giving you an update in terms of the current position. I think just in terms of by way of background, members may be aware of a letter which Minister sent in July outlining position of the local government audit market and the proposals for a reset of the local government audit market, and there have also been recent media reporting as well, where Lee Rowley on the Municipal Journal kind of reaffirmed the position that was outlined in his letter. The proposals seek to set a statutory deadline for accounts preparers, establishing a backstop date to clear the backlog of outstanding audits. There's proposals to continue to require auditors to report on value for money responsibilities as well as their existing statutory powers, and there's also a requirement for potentially changes to the CITFA code, changes to scope of audit, and developing an escalated reporting framework. Currently, in terms of the audit market on a national basis, as at the 30th of September, only 5 out of 467 local authority accounts for 22-23 were signed by the 30th of September nationally. So that outlines the position of the audit market as it is, and taking the number of outstanding audits to around about 920 audits, that are still that are outstanding. So basically, you've got a system that is in need of a reset. We were expecting guidance to be coming out in September and then October. Presently, that guidance from the DLUC and the FRC still outstanding, although it has been outlined that there is an expectation that the reset will occur and that there'll be a backstop date of the 31st of March 2024 in terms of in terms of outstanding audits and the completing of those audits, which may include the issuing of qualified or disclaimed opinions for outstanding audits. There's an expectation that pension fund audits will not be subject to the reset, and as I said, value for money responsibilities will still be applying. So as a firm, we've been focusing on undertaking and completing audits which are close to completion, with a high likelihood of us issuing an opinion by early 2024. And in that vein, just the number of audits that we've signed off recently since July are approaching just over 60 audits in terms of those ones where we're looking to where they are close to conclusion. And as I said, we're focusing on our pension fund audits and starting work on our value for money reporting responsibilities. In the context of Derby City Council, so you've got the 2021 audits outstanding, and also the 21-22 and the 22-23 audits. Had a meeting with yourself, Chair, before the last audit committee, and also have met with officers in terms of outlining where we're at. On the Derby City Council audit, we've identified an issue in terms of ability to rely on the work of the component auditor, which will require significant additional work now on those outstanding accounts, and as such, our priorities have been focused elsewhere in terms of other audits, in terms of looking to complete those ones. So that's a summary of the position as it is now. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you for the report. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Mr. Sunderland.
I mean, quite clearly, the outlining the national position is interesting, and obviously declaring interest, having been a previous member of the Audit Commission staff. Everything's gone to pot since the Audit Commission went. Anyway, that's another matter. I would say that, wouldn't I? As far as the Derby City Council audits, outstanding audits, the 3 outstanding years audits, on this issue of the Derby homes, which was mentioned last time, the issue of, I understand it, some consultancy work was also done by the existing auditors there, where you weren't able to rely on their work. Is that in summary is what it is, I think. What exactly is involved in there? I mean, how much is involved? What does it relate to? Is it, what's the figure?
I'll come back to the committee providing the exact figure. But what it means is, in terms of transactions on the group financial statements, because they've provided tax services, and under the NAO's auditor guidance notes, those tax services are prohibited for us as your auditors to undertake, and that means, as well as the reliance that we place on component auditors, we need to ensure that they're also adhering to the same requirements. So for the group financial statements, it means that we can't rely on the work that they would have undertaken on the transactions which are within the group financial statements, which means that then we'll have to do our own testing directly of the financial figures for the subsidiary account, for the subsidiaries which are reported within the group accounts.
Which is very interesting, but I mean, why can't you give us a figure? Because as far as your audit of Ustra, there's a materiality level of around £3.5 million. Are you suggesting that the amount involved is over £3.5 million? You haven't given us a figure. I don't know what the figure is.
So the subsidiary is material to the group financial statements, which is why we were looking to rely on the work of the component auditor. If it wasn't material to the group financial statements, then it wouldn't have been an area where we would have looked to rely on the work of the component auditor.
So, is it a material figure in any context? What is the figure? Why can't you tell us what the figure is?
I said I can tell you, and I'll get back to you on that.
Well, we sort of asked the question last time and didn't get back to us this time. So, does anybody know? I mean, do you know, Alison? Any idea? Yeah, I mean, it just seems bizarre that we're having to pay more money for more work to be done on something which is covered, and we don't even know what the figure involved is. You know, it might be cheaper for us to pay the consultancy or to pay it back to the thing rather than pay the auditor. I don't know.
It's a thought. Our external auditor has offered to provide a figure as soon as possible, so we'll provide that figure as soon as we can. That's a good question. Thank you, Councillor Kerr.
I'm a bit concerned here about the principle, because clearly Derby Homes pay for the audit of their accounts done to a recognised standard. But it sounds as though we, as the parent body, are also having to pay for the audit of that same material to presumably the same standard. And there seems to be a lack of trust between two professional bodies. And that, I'm sure that's, you know, if we didn't just have Derby Homes, but we had other subsidiaries, this would be multiplied upwards. And is this really the way it's supposed to work?
Would perhaps you'd mind explaining the protocol to the committee members?
So in terms of undertaking an audit, and particularly in line with the auditor guidance notes which are issued by the NAO, which relate to the audit of local government bodies, as to maintain audit independence, there are certain non-audit work which are prohibited under those guidance notes, and tax services are one of those one of those services which are prohibited. So if you were to do that, then as the auditor, it's deemed to be a service which could compromise your independence as external auditors of of a local government body. In the case of the Derby Homes, the component auditor has also provided tax services as well as auditing the financial statements of the subsidiary. In providing those tax services, it means that we, as the auditors of the parent entity, can't rely on that work, because there's then a question. It raises questions about the independence of the component auditor, and because we can't rely on the work of the component auditor, then we need to undertake that testing ourselves. If the work hadn't been provided, then there wouldn't have been those questions about independence, which arises as a result of the guidance notes which we're required to follow. Okay,
what I think I understand is that Derby Homes had asked their auditors to do more work. If Derby Homes had asked their auditors to do less work and hadn't done the tax work, then we wouldn't have this issue. So should we be putting a recommendation to Derby Homes, through whatever route it needs to go, to say, please could you separate these responsibilities to different companies in future, so that we don't have this issue next year, following year?
It's a great suggestion. To the best of our knowledge, does this situation exist on an ongoing basis, or was that a one-off for that year?
My understanding is that it applies for the 21-22 financial year and the 20-21 financial year. I'm not sure about the 22-23 financial year.
Just to clarify, it's just those 2 financial years where the additional audit was brought in terms of that consultancy.
Thank you. So it is a good suggestion. It doesn't sound like the situation is occurring on an ongoing basis, but that doesn't stop us from sending a note just to remind them that in future to be more careful in that arrangement and the consequence it has.
I'd certainly support that, Chair, to have an advisory letter going to Derby Homes to ask them to keep it separate in future.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Go together offline, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Councillor Wright.
Yeah, I suppose it's a question for Director of Finance, really. We had this response at the last meeting, the same discussion. We've gone into it a bit more depth today, but it doesn't sound like a satisfactory position to be in. But are you saying that that's just the way things working at the moment? We've just got to grin and bear it?
Obviously, we've got deep concerns about the fact that we're not being able to progress these audits, and we've had regular contact with EY on this, but we have come to a pass really in terms of the fact that the company won't audit the accounts. They say it's material back to the City Council accounts, and they won't do that until the publication from CIPFA around the code and further information on the timescale. So we're in a bit of a situation where we just can't make any headway with it really. But it's not ideal, absolutely not ideal. I've obviously got concerns about the value of money assessments and the outstandingness of that, because there's obviously the territory that local government is in at the moment, and not having 3 sets of annual accounts in a regime where lots of local authorities are issuing Section 114 notices, and there's questions around financial sustainability. That is an absolute concern when external audit on alongside us in that work. I have spoke to Hassan and his team, and they have agreed to pick up that work in the new year in terms of the value for money work. So that will be coming in January. But in terms of the accounts, we're just waiting for the additional guidance, and that's the position of EY as a company. And I'm afraid that's the situation we're in.
there any other questions, Mr. Sunderland?
Just to come back on what was been said so far, I mean, so additional work has to be done here, which presumably EY are going to charge us for. Do we know when that's going to happen? How much is that going to cost? Have we considered recharging that to Derby Homes? Sorry, I'm slightly flippant, but you know, I don't know whether we could. So, what in terms of timescales? I mean, Alison's talked about early New Year and doing VFM works and things. When will we end up having some accounts? Because having 3 lots of accounts unsigned off is completely unsatisfactory, and you know, it's absolute nonsense for us to get any assurance that the auditors are doing a job, let alone the correct job. It has all sorts of implications. Maybe we ought to get an internal audit to do additional work to satisfy ourselves that arrangements in place. I'm not suggesting we do, but you know, we can't get any satisfaction from what external audits are doing at this point in time for 3 years, and we're into the 4th year now.
Probably speaking on behalf of Hassan, so I know in the conversations we had, obviously, external audit are waiting until that additional guidance comes out to be able to determine the level of the work they need to do for the 2021-22 accounts. It may be that they don't have to do the detail, and there's conversations around qualifications, but until that guidance comes out, they're not committing to the work and not committing us to be able to pay for that work until they understand the level of detail they need to do to close those accounts off. I think that's where we are, aren't we, Hassan?
Yeah, that's right. So what I said, what we're doing as a firm, we're prioritising the completion of audits which are near, you know, where we're nearer to completing and being able to get those audits over the line. And we are at this stage waiting for the guidance, but we are also looking to prioritise the work on our pension fund accounts where we know that they've got to be completed, and also then moving to the value for money work where we know that we're going to have to be reporting on those arrangements under the current proposals.
Just a reminder to use your microphone, Mr. Sunderland.
Sorry, the pension fund audit's been done at the county council, so that's been sorted. That has been done already, presumably. So you can rely on that. So what you're saying is you are prioritising other audits where you're near a completion, and we're somewhere down the line of being signed off because of an additional issue which has arisen here, which hasn't arisen elsewhere. Is that correct?
Partly. Do you want to respond directly?
Yeah, that is correct.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, so sort of listening to everybody, basically we don't know when the account's going to be signed off. Then basically that's the crux of it.
I think that's a fair comment, and you know, largely to an extent, this is relying on word back from central government on the matter of whether or not work needs to continue on prior years. So, in the absence of that, yes, I think that's a fair comment. Yeah, Councillor Bolton.
Yes, Chair, I just want to echo what Philip said a few moments ago in his contribution, and Neil. We've been in this situation for many, many months now, and we don't seem to be moving on, or we're not moving on. We've had EY here and to tell us really nothing fresh, because there was somebody at the last meeting who couldn't really enlighten us further. And I just think this is an unsatisfactory situation to be in. What can we do as a committee to move this on? If the hold-ups, somebody's just said central government, what can we do about that? It's just not a very efficient situation for us to be in as a council, and I am very frustrated about it. We need to move on. You know, it just isn't a good working practice.
I agree with all of that. It's difficult. I guess we could lobby central government. I know that you're already lobbying central government. Would you like to provide an update?
I was just going to say that under the proposals, and they are proposal at this stage because it hasn't been firmed up in guidance. The proposals are for a backstop date as of the 31st of March in order to get the reset for the local government audit market. And under those proposals, I think as Alison has highlighted, there will be potentially qualified disclaimed audits for outstanding years in order to reset for the 23-24 financial year.
Thank you. In any case, still not ideal, but at least that's some movement. And that 31st of March, did you say, for the hard backstop?
That is what's being proposed at this moment in time. That's what we're working towards, but the guidance hasn't actually been issued, so I can't say that is the firm date, but that's the date that's being worked towards.
Okay. I feel like that's a new firm date that's replaced a pre-existing firm date, but we are where we are with it. Mr. Webster, did you? Yeah.
There we go. Sorry. I think you just answered my question. I was going to ask, you mentioned the 31st of March, the deadline previously, and I was going to ask if EY are committed to meeting that deadline for all 3 years' accounts.
The 31st of March is being proposed as a backstop date, and by that date, under the proposals, then it would be a case that outstanding audits are completed in terms of certified, and that might mean that there'll be qualified disclaimed opinions being issued for those outstanding years. So, and if that's what comes about in terms of the guidance that's issued, that's what we'll work towards.
So have we done everything we possibly can to be prepared for the 31st of March if the guidance is as such to disclose prior years? Are we in a position to do that immediately at the time?
So in terms of your responsibilities, then you've prepared your financial statements for the years that are outstanding, and subject to what the guidance that comes out, we will then look to, if it is a case of issuing qualified or disclaimed opinions by the 31st of March, that's what we would do.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Sutherland.
One small point. I did actually, with one of my other hats on, I'm on the board of a small housing association in the Peak District, and we had a meeting with Clive Betts, who's the chairman of the standing committee at the House of Commons, and he was also interested in external audit. So, with permission, I actually did forward to him a copy of our annual report on the work of this committee, because it does highlight in there a number of issues relating to delays on accounts. So he is aware of it, he is issued it, and indeed there was something in the SIPA press comparatively recently about his concerns, his committee's concerns over the whole process and the need to reset the whole thing. And I think Hassan did touch on that right at the beginning. So I think there seems to be a national recognition there needs to be a complete reset of the whole process. But there is a lack of action to do that, and until the financial reporting, whatever it's called, there's a new committee a new organisation being set up to do that. Until that's up and running, I can't see anything happening, to be honest. But that's just my personal view.
It's a good summary of what's happening nationally. Okay, are there any more queries, comments, or observations for external audit at this time? In that case, thank you for your report. Feel free to hang on or feel free to leave as you please. Okay, the next item on the agenda then today is to receive a counter-fraud update. We have a speaker on the matter.
I'll pick it up first of all, Chair, if you don't mind. I'll introduce the report. Just to go through the report, this is the half-yearly counter-fraud update to keep members of this committee aware of what's going on. The key areas really I draw your attention to are Table 1 around the National Fraud Initiative and the number of matches that's been investigated by the council there. The key issue really is that there's been so far in this exercise, there's been no identification of fraud, but there have been 64 errors found, and the errors are detailed in paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4. The other key area of this report is that Tracy, who's in attendance today, the senior counter-fraud investigator, has updated the work that they're doing as the counter-fraud team, and the key area there is table 2 around the counter-fraud team savings breakdown. So you can see there what they're actually recovering, etc. And Tracy's here to answer any questions around that area if any of the members have that. Other areas, anti-money laundering, anti-bribery, again, there's been no referrals through on there. We've had no referrals through on whistleblowing either, and no referrals through on Ripper. So it's been pretty quiet. But other than that, that's what I really wanted to say on this report, Chair.
Thank you. Quiet is good. Tracy, did you want to speak about the report prior to opening to questions?
I think, as Richard alluded to, the savings that are listed in the report there give an indication of the sort of work that the fraud team have been doing so far this year. It's been a busy year, and I think the significant savings in there give credit to that. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. It is a good report. Yeah. Do members, Councillor Wright?
Yeah, first of all, I want to recognise the good work. I mean, it's really good that we do this check and that we're actually doing the work to see whether these referrals have got any basis. But I am a little bit concerned we've only got through about 11%, and whether within the remaining high proportion with categories like payroll and creditors, which if there is fraud there, that means real money that the council is losing rather than, like a parking permit, which is obviously concerning, but it's not money that the council's losing. And I'm just want to be reassured really in those, whether you actually, of those 11%, whether it's across all the categories or you're focusing on things like payroll and creditors, which have got a big financial impact if there are fraud, whether we could have a little bit more depth and how much confidence you've got that within the other, however, it's thousands of reports that you've got to go through, whether you're confident that they're going to have the same, they're going to be errors rather than real fraud.
Yeah, I can respond to that, Councillor. The majority of the work that the counter-fraud team do is not in relation to the National Fraud Initiative. So the majority of our work is outside of that. We do some of the high risk reports in the National Fraud Initiative, and some other departments within the council do identify some of those issues as well. So payroll to payroll, for instance, would be done by the payroll team. So the counter-fraud team will look at high-level ones, for instance, the right to buy cases for Derby Homes, the benefit to payroll cases, students to benefit. So we pick out the high-profile ones that we know historically have created results from the counter-fraud team's point of view. But the majority of the savings reflected in our report are not NFI.
So are you saying that the 11% are done by your unit, that it could well be like payroll are doing the vast majority of the 49 reports that relate to payroll?
Yeah, so the fraud team don't do the payroll cases, only ones that relate to other matters such as benefit.
Yeah, the nature of NFI from its very start back in 1996 has been around the council having to rely on individual sections to pick up the matches that are generated within their area. So as Tracy was saying, we rely on the payroll section to look at the payroll matches. I mean, a lot of them, to give you an example, payroll matches were where we can have issues where we've got there's a councillor on, say, represented on Derbyshire Fire Authority and paid through that and paid through Derby City Council, for example, would show up as a match. Where, again, that's not fraud. That's just as it is. And they're the type of things that come up. So there's a lot of those type of issues within the National Fraud Initiative because it's data matching. But to go back to Councillor Wright's question, the problem is, it's asking people that's got a day job to do such and such to also try and then look at all these matches. And we find that across the council. I mean, we find from an audit perspective when we're trying to do audits, people are busy, they've got a lot of work on hand, and getting to meet with them is quite difficult. And also then having to do a lot of fraud investigation and things like that also adds to it. So it's how it is. I mean, we haven't got Tracy can only do certain work. Their role is self-financing. Tracy's team have to generate enough savings to pay for themselves. So it's not like we've got all this money. So they're looking at savings that will actually accrue to something that they can use. Hence why that separate table in there. But yeah, the nature of it means that it's going to have to be people within departments, etc., that are not fraud experts or things like that, having a look at these.
Thank you for the explanation. Does that answer your query? Settle your concern? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, in terms of the counter-fraud team, has the team reduced because of budgetary cuts in recent years, or has it stayed the same, and has that had an impact on the investigations you've been able to do?
It's an interesting question, and things have changed significantly in local authorities. Back in 2015, the Department for Work and Pensions introduced a single fraud investigation service. So all local authority investigators were TUPE'd into DWP. So that left a lot of local authorities with no fraud provision. Derby City Council reintroduced the fraud team in 2016, and a team were recruited back to the local authorities to specifically look into the fraud cases. So we haven't lost any staff since 2016.
Councillor Kerr, did you have a query?
I did, thank you very much. 3 things. Firstly, in terms of data matching, I understand the government's talking about widening the data that could be purchased by organisations. Is that going to make any difference to the data matching that we will be choosing or could be choosing to do, or do we not yet know?
Just to answer your question there, Councillor Kerr, I think it's very much in the stages of looking into that data. There's been nothing set in law as yet that they can match that data and provide the information to us. But I understand they're going to be looking at social care data, which will be of interest for us to look at.
Okay, to be explored further then. Secondly, in paragraph 411, you're talking about the council tax single person discount review. Is there anything more to say about that? Because it's been going on for quite a while. Is it going to come to an end? Is it something that's ongoing?
In respect of the council tax review, that's done externally by another company that Derby City Council are in contract to. That contract continues, and it's a continuous review. So each single person discount is touched at least once a year to ensure that it's still correct, and that's still providing savings for the authority.
Okay, that's lovely, thank you. And finally, Derby Homes is, I'm on Derby Homes board, so I don't know whether you're up to speed in that Derby Homes is going to be doing a survey of all its housing stock as a requirement from government, because there's a change in expectations in terms of the way housing organisations work with their tenants. And as part of knowing their tenants better, is this something that you're engaging with Derby Homes on to be able to ensure that people who are visiting are asking appropriate fraud questions as part of that conversation?
Thank you, Councillor. It's not something I'm aware of, but I'd certainly be interested in being aware of that, because that is one of the key issues that we've got, is identity of our customers. And certainly when we're looking at subletting type issues, that is a key issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Sunderland.
Just an interesting area that's come up recently in a recent health body. One area which you haven't mentioned here, and I wonder if you've considered any work in that area, is the implications of working from home. It's been reported at a recent health body that I'm aware of that they found somebody who had 5 jobs. Now, this person had 5 jobs, and what they were doing were basically doing these 5 jobs and subcontracting the work to other people. So you've got 5 jobs. The only reason they twigged it in the end was that one of the jobs happened to be in the health service. So basically, You sit at home, you organise 5 people to do 5 jobs, you rake in the money and you pay them some knockdown price, knockdown amount to the work. That's obviously an extreme case, but undoubtedly there could well be other cases. I'm not suggesting they're around here. I don't know. I don't know they're around here. Are we? Is the council aware, from either a fraud point of view, that people are actually doing the work that they're supposed to be doing it if they're working from home? Is there any requirement for them to come into the office to justify their work, to show their productivity? I just wonder whether you've done any work in the area of working from home and to check that people are actually doing the work.
I'll pick this one up, Chair. We haven't as yet done anything about that, although I do remember reading last week, I'm sure I spoke with Tracy about this, there is a pilot going on at the moment around working from home. I think is it, Tracy, is it the Cabinet Office that are looking at it as part of NFI?
Yeah, they're looking to introduce it as a data matching across a wider range of employers, because currently NFI only data match with certain employers, but they're looking to widen that because they're realising it is a risk.
It's a big risk, and I don't see anybody doing any regular checks, and I'm not quite sure how you would do it, but I'm sure there is a way of doing it. We've got my thinking cap on, I could probably think of a way of looking for these things, but there must be some way of checking that people are actually fulfilling the functions, and they're not duplicating jobs. They're not got jobs one here and one somewhere else, and either not doing the job or doing the job and subcontracting it to somebody else. But that subcontract job is an extreme case, and it is a real job. It is a real case that has happened in the country somewhere.
It's a good point. It's something I'm loosely aware of as well. I know that there is national work happening primarily through the Department for Work and Pensions. Is that the same piece of work that you're aware of?
Yes, it is, yeah.
So there are some measures being taken. Ultimately, though, we need to have some faith in the management protocols and the line management capabilities of the council. And if work wasn't being done, I would like to think it would be caught by that as a measure initially. But it's a very good point. It's well made, and work is underway, as I'm hearing. Yeah, thank you. Are there any more questions based on counter fraud, Mr. Webster?
Yes, thank you. Your paper outlines that there have been no disclosure into whistleblowing or money laundering or bribery or RIPA. Have there been any other fraud investigations or fraud allegations made that are being investigated?
Nothing by internal audit, but Tracy will pick up her area of those, and they'll all be reflected in the work she's doing.
Yeah, we get fraud referrals on a daily basis from a wide variety of sources. Whether they transpire to be fraud in the final outcome remains for the investigation to find out, but certainly we're investigating a number of frauds currently.
Are those reported to this committee when they're completed?
So in terms of the results that you can see today in Appendix 2, they are reported once we're aware of them and they've been completed. Some cases may start as a fraud case and end up being dealt civilly. Other cases we do have in the prosecution pipeline.
Thank you. Any other queries, comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time and responses, and thank you for the report. We can move on to item number 9 on the agenda, which is the Internal Audit Progress Report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, just to run through this, it's the usual style of report again, giving you an outline of where we are with the 22-23 audits, maybe we say 23-24 audits, not 22-23. But yeah, there's a few areas that things are moving on. As I said last time, we're still getting knocked back occasionally on things because we can't get in, although we are following those. We have got an escalation process that we said, and there is the threat there that if people we think they're deliberately trying to avoid audit, we will bring them before, ask them to come attend the committee for you to inquire of them as to what the issues are. If we move on to the audits that have actually completed in the last quarter, as you can see there, we've got 5 reasonable, 3 substantial, and 1 limited, being the PCI compliance. I mean, PCI compliance has been an issue for a number of years now. It is guidance that we are auditing against. A lot of authorities will tell you it's much cheaper to actually pay the fine than it is to actually implement all the guidance and standards that are there. So, and a lot of authorities do that. However, we looked at it, it's limited, and it's one of these areas where, as a council, we have to weigh up whether it's advantageous to implement all these things, or to actually just say, okay, no, it's from a finance point of view, it's cheaper just to pay the fines of how much per terminal it actually is. But as Andy Bramwell would tell you, this is really aimed at shops and that type of thing, and we have all the security in place around this, and Andy's report later will explain what type of security they have, and I mean, he does detail this to committee on a number of occasions in the past. So again, it's not an issue I'm extremely worried about. I mean, it's just really making sure that we are doing something about PCI compliance, and we're aware of what it is, and people are either looking at the risks there and mitigating those risks, or accepting those risks. If we move on to recommendations, again, this is a movable feast. We've still got the one recommendation that is a significant risk recommendation around the cremators that has been ongoing for a couple of years now. However, with the moderate risks, these are moving. There's some detailed in there. There's one on boundary defence on page 17 where I've said, we're waiting for confirmation that the review of the current firewall has been completed. I can now report to committee that it has, so that one will now be closed off. And then further down, there's the catering stocks and stores on page 20, which is an area that was a major investigation a few years ago, that those members of the committee that were around a couple of years ago, like Councillor Kerr and Sunderland, will remember. We have reported through to committee on these. We've done follow-up audits on areas of that to make sure they are actually implementing the recommendations, and further audits have been done, further recommendations have been made. I can now report that the 2 recommendations on catering we've closed off this morning, so it's good news. Other than that, there's not a great deal to say on this report. Even on the quality assurance and improvement programme, the one key area for internal audit there is the implementation of our new audit management system from the 1st of April. We're doing a lot of work on that at the moment. We're at the configuration stage, and we're hopeful that we should be in place to go live on the 1st of April with that. That's what I really wanted to say on the progress report, Chair.
Thank you. Members, do you have any queries or comments? Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the significant risk recommendation regarding bereavement services audit, obviously it was 3 years ago it was first brought to Audit Committee. The comment there says there's been no further update, but do we have any time frame on when this business case is likely to be completed?
From an audit point of view, we're reliant on senior management of the council to accept that business case and to move it on.
So if I just give an update, the corporate leadership team received the first draft of that business case yesterday, so it is in progress.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. The list of place audits that are from this year, as opposed to the ones that were being brought forward from last year, shows that there haven't been any completed, although we're nearly 3/4 of the way through the year. There obviously are some that have been brought forward, but are you concerned with that situation in terms of getting a view of the councils, across the council's function?
There's a slight concern, Councillor Kerr, in that I would like these to be progressing. As you can see, the only one we've done so, we've got one draft report in there at the moment. The rest, as you say, are all in progress. They are taking a bit longer to do than we anticipated. This is one of the areas where we are getting a bit of knockback when we're trying to do things. Martin's here, who looks after the police department. I don't know if Martin, if there's anything you can add to that as to why they're taking a bit longer than usual.
I think all there is to say about them is that the individual sections within that directorate are really struggling. They've been cut back to the quip over the last several years, and we are struggling to not get engagement. They are engaging with us, they are liaising with us and talking to us, but to actually put the time aside to go through the individual controls and systems and processes that they've got in place, it can be sometimes time consuming, and they just generally haven't got that time. A number of those audits, some of the low percentage ones, for example, waste management, the Eastern Gateway, Moorway Sports Village, they are very low percentages because they've asked if they can be deferred until tail end of Q3, early Q4, and that's basically just because of officer capacity. The ones that have got some progression against them, they're also being delayed, but they are ongoing, but at a snail's pace. I'm quite concerned, I'm quite worried with respect to it, but the problem is you can only do what you can do. You obviously don't want to hold up the business as usual and the daily duties, which obviously these sections and services do. We're supposed to sort of fit in around them, so that's what we're attempting to do as best as possible. But yeah, there is a plan in hand. We are attempting to progress them as soon as possible, but yeah, unfortunately, it's a situation as is. It's the current climate.
Just before we come back on that, I don't accept incapacity in terms of time. I don't accept that as a reason. And I would like us to push back. If somebody says they don't have time to engage on this level, I don't accept it.
I think probably if this committee probably wants to pass some sort of directive or motion with respect to that, then, because I know from our perspective it's really difficult when they say they haven't got the capacity because they are stretched, and if they obviously take the time out to do this, the service will suffer as a result. We obviously don't want the service to suffer as a result. So yeah, we're sort of between the devil and the deep blue sea when trying to prioritise these things. They are genuine reasons and genuine issues that they have, which they come back to us with.
Think on that one for a minute, Councillor.
I'm concerned that we get to the end of the year and we find that our head of audit, whatever his title is when he does this bit, tells us that actually he's not seen enough of the council. He's not to actually say that everything seems to be all right. And I think we need to be pushing now at the top to say that we need to create the capacity within the place teams to be able to do a bit more work. And I think that needs to go to, it's going to be Rachel North, it needs to be Paul Simpson who hear that message. And I think if we flag it up at our next meeting, it'll be too late.
Yeah, I mean, that might have swayed my mind even more. If we were in a position where there was a significant risk event and we were then to respond to that by saying officers didn't have time to dedicate, I don't think it's acceptable. So I do think we should be making a recommendation that lack of time is not an appropriate excuse. I don't know what members think. We'll come back. Would you like to?
I mean, I totally agree with the committee. You know, we needed an audit opinion at the end of the day. I think probably as a solution here, if Richard and I raise this as a strategic conversation at our corporate leadership team with the directors and the chief execs for those particular areas and see if we can put some pressure on getting some of these progressed and then come back to audit committee. Quite happy to do that.
It's a good offer, thank you. I obviously accept the offer. I think from my perspective, I do want it to be known loud and clear that it's not acceptable, and that we do want people to make the time, whatever that means, and we don't want to be in a position where but what I'm saying in a roundabout way is I don't have time to look at this is not an appropriate response, and we don't want to hear it again. I'll leave that with you to raise that internally.
I wonder if it would help, Alison, if we did make some resolution to that effect, as you just said. Would that help you in your action?
I guess that
because
demonstrates the strength
rather than just
of
say Alison turned up and say, yeah, this has come up. If the committee resolves, I can't think of
it demonstrates the strength of feeling. So if we resolve that representatives from this committee make it clear across the council that incapacity and lack of time are not appropriate responses to delay reviews of these actions, then is everybody in favour?
And particularly, Chair, regarding the lack of completion of any of this year's place audit.
Agreed, yeah. Councillor Wright.
I mean, I totally agree, but I think we ought to frame it in the way that internal audit is all about improving the way that we do business. And if people aren't taking the time to actually engage in that process, it gives me the impression that people aren't of a culture, they want to improve the way that the business is done. And I don't believe that is the case, but, you know, if that's the feedback we're getting, that appears. So I agree with that. I think be it framed in understanding what internal audit is trying to achieve, which is improve the services that we deliver.
I think that's a wonderful addition, thank you. And we do need to keep focused on that. It should be a benefit, not a chore. And we need to keep focused on the fact that outside of the council environment, these would be disciplinary matters. So we are still taking a lenient approach here. Mr. Dolman.
No, thank you. Thank you, Chair. This was the point I was trying to make at the beginning about the risk appetite. Going back to what's our tolerance for risk, and the point Richard made at the last meeting, the executive are accepting or pushing back on risk accepting audit recommendations. So that's one area where you see a dilution of control, and then if you haven't got time to do the audits, that's another dilution of control. So for me, the point of pushing back around the minutes and around what we wanted to see was in that flavour. So I do think there is a need to get clear about what our attitude to risk is going forward.
Good point, particularly about the risk acceptance. And I just want to finally add to that matter that I remain keen to have a time-based restriction on the amount of time people can push this back before they're invited to committee to justify their position. So I'm keen to progress that if we can in time for the next meeting. Mr. Webster.
Yes, thank you. My concern is in the open recommendation tracking. Particularly the numbers have gone up slightly since the last meeting. We now have 22 with action due and 53 being implemented. Am I right in saying it says action due means the agreed actions are due, but internal audit has been unable to ascertain any progress information from the responsible officer? Does that mean that internal audit has asked for an update and the officer just simply has not replied?
It's a bit of that, as I have to say, yes. I mean, the system we've got at the moment, our current audit management system sends out an email to individuals asking them for an update. We don't always get responses to those. We sometimes get responses, but they're not always telling us exactly what's happening. What we also do as well on a quarterly basis is we send to each director a list and details of all the recommendations that are outstanding in their area and ask them to put pressure on their heads of service and managers to respond to us. I also attend CLT, corporate leadership team, on a regular basis, again quarterly, to give an update on internal audit. And again, that's focusing on recommendations. And it's something that Paul Simpson, as Chief Exec, has hammered home to his directors, that he wants action on this. He doesn't want to, as he put it, doesn't want to appear before audit and governance again to have to answer questions around why recommendations aren't being implemented in a timely manner. So it's certainly a push from the top, but again, the message is getting down, but we're still not getting the response as much as we would like for this. The new audit management system that we'll implement from the 1st of April will allow people to go directly onto the system and put in their updates. That might encourage them a bit more. I don't know. That time will tell, and we'll practice on that one. But yeah, I mean, we do send out regular emails to people. We quite often find 10 or more reminders have been sent out to get people to respond. And it's not just Derby City, it is across the partnership. We do have, we find that in other councils and other organisations that we audit. So unfortunately, it's a way with internal audit and our recommendation. People don't always take them as serious as they should do.
Well, let's help them then. So I'm keen to add to the resolution that we've already discussed about people responding, saying they don't have time or they're not taking it seriously, is what I'm hearing. If we add to that lack of response is an automatic invite to this committee. Are members comfortable with that? Let's add that to the resolution then. It's sad that you have to face this. I know it's not unique, but thank you for keeping up the efforts to try and encourage responses. Councillor Kerr.
I just wondered whether it might work better to keep them as separate resolutions, one dealing with the audit process and the other dealing with the responses and recommendations after an audit's been completed.
Agreed. Yeah. That's a good point. Thank you. Stolman.
Thank you. So a couple of quick points. On page 6, you know, the table giving the summaries, we've got Perth House as substantial, but on page 8, on the detail, it's reasonable. And I just wondered which one was true.
We'll just check on that one for our records.
On the two more quick points, if I may. There's a theme on some of the findings that policies aren't being updated. It's certainly 3, maybe 4 of the audits, going back to 2015, 2017, last time updated. I wondered if that was a theme that you're seeing, that we're not on top of policies, because that can be an indicator about how we are managing risk.
Is it a theme? Potentially, yes. I mean, we are picking this up more when we do audits, that there are policies that haven't been looked at for some time. And it is becoming more of a regular recommendation that we make around policies, you know, that they need to be reviewed. So, yeah, and I do take Dolman's point on that one.
I mean, maybe, I don't know whether the council has a policy about policy updating. Maybe it should, because best practice will be reviewed annually. And the longer you leave them, the harder they are to do.
It's something to think about. Yeah, we, we have a policy. I'm pretty sure the council will have a policy, whether it's documented or not. Well,
Chair, it should be substantial. Yeah, the wrong chart has been put onto the on page 8, but it is substantial.
And my last point, I promise you. On page 10, the fire safety compliance management audit, the first comment, which is a moderate risk rating, talks about there was issues of false recording seen. And I worry when I see comments around people falsifying records, if that's what we're saying. And I wonder if you could perhaps add a little bit more to that, Richard.
And that's something I'll have to look into. I'll have to have a look at the working papers around that.
Thank you. We'll let you take that in your stride. Mr. Webster.
Thank you. Yes, another point. On the Quality Assurance and Improvement Plan, my thought is various actions on there, should they have due dates in line with the actions from audit?
They're all actions that we were planning to do in 23-24. I mean, a lot of them are, again, with the amount of work we've got, we'll have to put some things to the side. The main focus at the moment is around the audit management system and getting that configured and implemented.
Councillor Kerr.
It is, one of the things is within the IT team, there's a lot of things going on at the moment, a lot of developments. And what we're finding is a lot of those developments that they're doing anyway are picking up on a lot of the things we're finding. So they are addressing them, but in another way. But, you know, they've got key issues that they've got to do at the moment. So yes, there are some things, but what they're saying is, yes, this will be picked up, but it'll be picked up as part of this piece of work that we're doing. So that's why sometimes it's looking like it's being delayed, but they are actually scheduling it as part of another piece of work.
Perhaps it could be categorised as being captured under another work stream for clarity.
apologies. Happy to add on that one. There are inevitably on within the IT space much more complex resolutions to findings that are part of a longer piece of technology implementation. For example, that takes a finite amount of time to implement. So there are a lot more that are likely to be a longer fix due to that very nature. It takes X amount of time to put certain technologies in place and roll it across a large organisation, and that is often the case with findings.
Thank you.
Finally, Chair, the following, I think it's just the following item up top of page 19 on send. Are they likely to actually hit these deadlines? Because yeah, it just seems to be quite challenging. They're talking about getting it, the revised date at the beginning of next month.
I'd like to say yes, but I'm not sure at the moment. Again, we'll be following it up at some stage anyway, so we'll be reporting back to you at the next meeting as to whether they have achieved those deadlines or not.
Thank you. Okay. Any more queries? Thank you both. In which case we can move on then to item number 10, which is the internal audit plan for 2023-24, quarter 4.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, as you can see from Appendix 1, the planned work there is detailed. Again, there's a number of areas that we're doing across the quarters, but there are some new ones coming in, certainly in the Chief Executive Department. There's asset management and key financial risks, are the two key areas we're looking at there. In communities in place, we want to pick up on the stewardship of the council vehicles and the fleet management side of things, which is something we haven't looked at for some time. And I do have some worries around that area. There's been a lot of change of personnel in that area as well, so it's something that we want to have a look at. And in people services, one of the key areas for us is home to school transport. Again, as you can see, that's been flagged up as a potential high risk through the contract management programme team originally. But again, it's something that we are dealing with. It fits in with the SEND thing as well. It's something, home to school transport is something we look at quite often. But again, we've agreed with the director there that we'll look at that in quarter 4, so that's why that's come up here. Then there's the usual cross-cutting ones that try and get, so I can get assurance from a vast number of areas. The one thing that does start to impact on internal audit work at the moment is the grant certification, because we do get a lot of requests to, well, I have to sign off a lot of the grants now, as that we've audited to make sure that everything is as it should be, and that the monies have been spent on what they should have been spent. So I have to put my name to that. So we've got a couple of staff that do a lot of that, and around quarters 3 and quarter 4 we do a lot of work around that. The thing is, there's a lot more grants coming out of the woodwork now that we don't know about, and suddenly we get them landed on us. Like, oh, this needs doing by Friday. Can you audit this? So that's another area. And then there's the, if you look down at page 7 of there's all the indicative audit work for quarters 1, 2 and 3 of next year that we're starting to have a look at. And there's a number of areas there that are slightly different to areas we've looked at in the past, but will be interesting areas, I think, certainly for reporting back to this committee on. That's what I wanted to say on that, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody have any queries or comments? Councillor Kerr.
One of the other areas there has been recent movement has been in blue badge processing. People may be aware that there's a long delay at the moment, and the responsibility of that has been shifted around a bit. And I don't think it's ready to be audited yet, but I think it's something that might want to be included next year. And it's obviously an area that's interested in the fraud side of things as well. So just to put that as a sort of marker.
Yeah, blue badge is an area that we've looked at in the past, and it's picked up, as you know, from the National Fraud Initiative, but there are long delays, etc. And we've picked up things in the media and stuff like that, that people are unhappy with those things. So it will be something that's on our radar and will be added in.
Thank you. Any more queries or comments? Okay. Thank you for that. Right, we move on then to item number 11. But before we do, item number 11 is to exclude the press and public. So the resolution then would be that under section 100A of the Local Government Act of 1972, the press and public be excluded from this meeting during the discussion of the following items on the grounds that they involve a likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3, part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act. And public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Are we all in favour of the motion?